on chain. So we've been working with the various different partners that have worked with UST to make sure that the data that they provided to us is accurate. Um, it's proving to take some time, yeah. But once that process is over, we're going to liquidate all of LFG's holdings, and then begin the process of making small holders get their airdrops.
Purely, so that doesn't, okay, so
You're a smart guy, and you know stable.
so basically he basically described how he did the Luna 2.0 distribution, but it was a shit show because he should have not made that coin just days after Luna and Terra, like, they fell. So but then, like, not
That's
all
not enough
exchanges.
time.
There's not enough time, and then a lot of exchanges were like, "No, we're not doing this shit again," and like did not allow him to even send tokens. So then he didn't even have a correct allocation of and then he obviously didn't redistribute the equivalent amount that was lost. Correct? He like fucked everyone over for the third time by like saying we're only going to release 30% of your total balance, and releasing 30% of a total balance of a recopied asset that's no longer pegged to another asset, which is just a free floating fucking coin, is the most moronic thing. And then he force locked everyone to stake the rest of it and then be redistributed. And as he said, like in weird terms, and then he was going to sell the rest of the reserve. And I'm like,
Right.
none of
It's
that
not
makes
like an
sense.
actual. It doesn't. If it were an
That's
actual
weird.
initial
Come
first
on.
time airdrop, then I understand releasing it in increments. That makes sense because you don't want to launch a project and have everybody just dump what was airdropped to them, the full amount that was airdropped to them. That makes sense in releasing it over time. But this is not that. This was
And just
done
to
to
reiterate,
like make up for the shit show that just happened.
but this is why he should be sitting in a courtroom right now, because he should be going through what Celsius is going through, where they lock you in a room, you can't leave the country, and then you have to decide. They have to make a plan for you to give the money back because you clearly can't
I'm
make a
just
logical plan. This is
I'm
not
just
okay. Whatever
curious.
he came up with doesn't work. It didn't work. It wasn't going
I'm
to work. And now look at everyone.
I'm just curious as far as like him not being gone after in the US, if it's just because of like
Connection.
jurisdictional issues, right?
It has to
Since
be his
it
connections. He has to know someone. Because he should be in a cell. Like, this is way too comfortable. Like, comfortable, vagrant,
and
not a
he
care
also
in the
affected
world.
people like in multiple countries, not in just Korea, not
Of
in
course.
just
And then
Singapore.
I've heard numerous consistent complaints with his energy of being aggressive, that people are afraid of him. Like, I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what's his deal in his country, but like something's like there's something weird surrounding him, because I feel like this is all clear awareness and like allusion to like, being a part of something and like causing it. Where if you're going to give the money back and you can't decide, you need to be in a courtroom so they can decide for you. He should have done like, that's the thing. Wait, so if you liquidate your companies, you can't do any form of bankruptcy, right? Because your company's already liquidated and doesn't exist legally anymore.
I don't know. I don't
So
know how
look,
those things
that
work.
so you dissolve a company. There's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
What can you bankrupt? You can't
Right.
bankrupt a dissolved entity that no longer has assets because the token went down and the reserves are cleared because the entity doesn't exist anymore and it was never a legal, really standing thing, hypothetically.
Which kind of brings us back to when to the kill switch, right? I wonder if the Terra Luna Foundation was actually like in bankrupt, was facing bankruptcy. Like if they were underwater, I wonder what their books look like.
I mean, if you keep creating tokens, it's hard to be underwater, but sure. If you're just he was giving himself 300 million Luna tokens times 100. I'm not going to calculate it because I don't want to get angry. It's a lot of money. He basically already got the money out. He just needed to like shut it down, basically. That's what I'm hearing. That's what it's alluding to.
So you think it was more of a laundering thing?
Essentially, yes. I'm not a legal advisor, nor do I do financial advice, but that's what it
Allegedly,
sounded like.
allegedly,
Allegedly, and it's like,
allegedly.
why?
And this
So
is
to me,
spe-
my issue
this is
is
a purely
I'm
speculative statement.
speculative. Okay,
Purely
so
purely speculative statement.
if I create something, why would I issue myself 300 million tokens off of just vibes, right? Like, should I have some form of passive income being returned? Because remember, I'm paying out yield, I'm paying for developers, I'm funding all this stuff. Where is my revenue coming from? How do I have
Right.
enough revenue to match the amount of funding that I'm allotting myself from newly minted tokens? That's weird, shaky territory.
Right. And according to Twitter, like as of right now, they're not using that much VC. Right now, they are
Well, they shouldn't have to at this point. I wouldn't
community
imagine that they
funded.
would.
Well, I
I'm
wouldn't
sure they
imagine
shouldn't
that
have
any
to.
VCs would be comfortable engaging
You know,
in
unless you're
that.
a moron, but yeah, I mean, that's and I hate. So he makes statements that are like he's a professional gaslighter. Well, we're not accepting any VC funding. There's no VC that would wake up and donate any type of funding to you ever. So he's literally he's gonna pull like whatever those Solana devs did, where he's probably gonna make stuff and he's not gonna announce his name. He's gonna be an anonymous pseudo founder for like the rest of his life, probably.
I don't like that. I don't like those.
Mm, I
That
don't
all
like it
sounds
if they
like the
hold
government to me.
token allocation. If they hold token allocation, I don't trust it. But if they like make it delete their keys and dip, all right, none of my business. Can't find you. Don't know who you are. But you can't be a suitor
Like,
founder that's tweeting. You
yeah,
know,
no.
like
Or
make
just
it
a
make
small
sense.
allocation.
Define small because clearly we don't know what that means in the crypto space. Just a few 100 million tokens.
I would say no more than like 5% of whatever is in creation or can be
I
in
don't know.
creation.
I'm iffy about that. I don't know if people have a right to give themselves tokens without it looking like you're shitty. I'm just sorry. It just if we think about it from like I have to think about things like what would the SEC use as an argument and try to bring up to use to fuck people over, right? So my thing is it's like why are you allotting yourself a token free use case of your blockchain or dApp, right? Like why do you have to have them? Like why? Like it's why I don't. It's like if you think about a business, like if I took out, like if I got funding and I just issued myself like 2 million out of my funding before I even did anything, that'd be weird, right? It's weird.
Right.
Kind of the same concept. We just don't talk about it because I think we give the founders a lot of leeway in crypto, but it is weird, really weird. I think you can allocate it to the foundation or you can allocate it to the project and then create, I don't know, a salary from your token or some type of stipend. But I don't think it's fair that a lot of crypto founders issue whatever they want to themselves. It's really selfish and it takes away legitimacy from most projects. And it's the number one excuse. That's the first thing the SEC goes for is like they look at the
So,
token allocation for projects.
so side note and segue, how do you then feel about Satoshi?
Does he have like, oh, he has
Yeah.
Bitcoin, right?
Yeah,
Um,
he has a large
but
amount.
but in some context, we don't even know if that man's alive. He just made that shit and dip and didn't touch his wallet. So even in the case of Satoshi, it wasn't like he made it and then was actively using it.
Right.
Like like what about
For now.
one of the well, Peely,
Yeah,
it's
for now.
2022. If he's gonna use it, but like, dear Lord, like again, I'm just saying like he allocated it, but with not the intentions of it appreciating in any form of value. Like
Mm-hmm.
you know, because if again, it would be used if he did. Um, compared to like the XRP founder, one of them that like made XLM that like sold all of his XRP off like the whole time for like years and years and years and years and years.
Well, that
Like
was part of his employment, like that was, I don't want to say him getting fired, but that was part of his settlement, like with leaving Ripple.
that's fine, but I still think it's like it becomes questionable if they again, like create a blockchain, create a project, create the tokens, issue it to the company itself, and then repay yourself out or pay for all fundings from a DAO. Cool, great, but it just shouldn't be going to. You shouldn't be make yourself billionaires before the work is done. You know, like the money's always gonna
I
come.
agree with that. I agree with that.
Like, because no one can control the amount of you're paying yourself out. No one can like go into that. No one can alter it. No one can question it. And we don't even know how much money this man has taken out of his own project. We have no idea. We'll never know.
Stablecoin's probably better than everyone in the world, I think. And you knew the risk around depegging. When it comes to those risks now, though, it's like you're making those decisions in your seat. I don't know if in your head you're thinking about what could happen to me as a person if this fails.
I like literally didn't think about that even for 1 second. I've never thought about what could happen to me if this fails.
Stop right now. Stop right there.
Liar.
Why is he lying?
He's a liar and a fraud.
Why is he lying? Like, if there's not a whole video on Cardi B's internet
No. Not her.
of him saying that he has a kill switch if things go wrong and he can dissolve the company in within 24 hours. What do you mean? Not on Alligator Gore's internet. Absolutely not.
I mean,
Not even once.
Why not?
Because I didn't think that this would fail.
But it's not even in the back of your mind, like, what do I do if this fails?
Not even once.
Have you failed before?
Liar!
okay.
Liar!
Lies, fails, and tails. Like, this is ridiculous.
Like, what is the reason?
what is
Why? Why? What is the reason? Why are you lying like that? There's evidence on the internet of him.
But when you're most people who are like pathological liars and narcissists, like literally live in their own.
They have so many lies that they
Literally-
can't keep up. They can't keep up with their lies. They just forget.
They just deny reality and they live in their own reality where they do nothing wrong. Nothing is their fault. Everything is a byproduct of chance, and they take no physical responsibility.
I can't. It's just, and he just looks so smug. It's very off-putting. I don't like it. I don't really care for this fellow.
In life.
Well, not much. I mean,
Wait,
I've
hold
had
on. I'm pausing this just because I can't see you. Okay, now I see you.
This has been the film edit of hell. I can't see your screen anymore.
You can't see me or my screen?
The share screen.
like a startup.
No, nothing.
No, what the fuck is happening?
Okay, so I stopped shared. Now I'm going to share again. Share system audio. Share. Now do you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on, give me 1 second. My foot is super itchy. I got bit by mosquitoes this weekend.
Oh,
Are there mosquitoes out by your way?
There's all types
You
of
guys
shit.
have-
There's salamanders, flies, crocodile. There's everything. This is Jurassic Park. I'm in a movie.
Are there mosquitoes in California?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't go outside, so yes, they do.
Yeah, I'm just not sure because I know that they're not really a thing like up north.
Well, so they do exist, right? But they come out more and
That
more
I gave up
humid,
on.
wet
Yeah.
weather. So I think that's simply it.
Mm-hmm.
Like they exist everywhere, but like you'll see them more frequently because I think they're drawn to pools of water. So any
Yeah.
place that has like lingering pools of water, they're gonna be more present. And in Georgia, it rains like once, like 3 times a week, like kind of like Florida, because it'll like rain randomly for like about 30 minutes and stop. So similar,
Mm-hmm.
same but different.
Yeah. I was at my friend's house on Saturday, and we were sitting outside, and
Hmm.
they started attacking me. And then I learned that if you burn coffee, they don't really like the smell of that.
That's why it's in my blood. My
Well,
my
also,
veins are
so
full of
they're
coffee.
attracted to blood types. They're more
I
attracted to O blood types than they are to other blood types, and I think O
I think I'm
positive more
AB negative.
specifically. Yeah,
I'm
they
either
might
AB
not just
negative or O
like
negative.
the.
One of those weird ass things.
Yeah, they probably just don't like the smell of your blood.
Do you know your blood type? I feel like no one
O
knows their blood
positive.
type. And anything, how do you know that? They just tell you?
Um. Well, I was in the military, so they told me.
When did you have time to do that?
I it wasn't that long. I ended up hurting my leg, and got out
Oh,
very early. But I was 19.
what made you want to go to the military?
I wanted to stop being poor and travel for free and have a free education and healthcare.
That is the theory behind that, however. You know,
Not because of my love for America. It was because I
oh,
was poor. Yeah.
kind of sounds like a trick when you describe it like that. You know, go to war, you'll get free education and travel. You know, it won't be too bad. You
Right.
might just lose an arm. Just avoid the
Like
violence.
I get to travel the world on the seven seas for free. I might get raped on a ship. Cool.
Oh, I forgot about that. Women have no, yeah, that. So yeah,
Yeah.
God,
Yeah.
fucking worthless.
Yep. But hey.
Yeah.
But hey.
Look at us now. That Paul
Look at
Rudd
us now.
meme. That's my
Look
favorite
at
meme. Look at us now. Who would have thought?
look look at me, just a fucking radical commie that served in the United States military. Well, attempted to.
That's a
But
good
that
thing to
was
say, Julie.
like mainly because I got more interested in crypto, and and this is sort of like the first major thing that I've done in my career. And before that, I had never failed before.
When people try and connect the dots between basis cash and what happened with Terra, and you talk about that wasn't me, that was a failed project. Some people could look at that and say, that's kind of setting up to make Terra look better than basis cash.
So to give some context on Basis Cash, we acquired a young team that was working on a staking derivatives.
I just want to say that I don't really understand why this part of the interview is even necessary or a topic of discussion, because who cares, and how and why is it relevant to what happens on this project that failed, and why did it fail?
But I also want to say that this is crazy because he doesn't understand how bad he fucked up this year. Like, you literally triggered regulation. You triggered regulation. How do you do that? How the fuck do you do that? And you're
One
sitting in a
person
room.
by yourself.
That's why. Well, him and 3AC. It was him. Well, no, he started it because 3AC was over leveraging and then had a bunch of money in. But it is his fault. He is the root of all evil this year. And it's just like you triggered a catalyst of financial loss that literally caused a bear market. And you can say whatever you want. Crypto was not in the shitters. It was like down, but it wasn't in the. It was like everyone's saying it's obviously like it goes through seasons, right? We know that. We expect a bear market. We also have all-time highs. We're not tripping. But this is like a self-proclaimed liquidity bear market triggered by this man. So there's no way you can sit in this room and calmly not answer questions and bring up all these unrelated things and think that that's okay or that even qualifies as like an interview. It's literally like Stockholm syndrome. Like, I don't know what's going on in his little brain of his, but like, this is not okay. And you are responsible by proxy.
He doesn't feel like he's responsible, though, unfortunately.
Clearly.
If everyone had a conscience.
Protocol on Cosmos. And one of the people that we acquired out of this team happened to be very brilliant. So we initially staffed this entire 5 or 6 person team to work on the anchor side of things. Now, one of these 5 happened to be very brilliant and contribute significant amount of work to the anchor protocol. But in terms of the other 5, they lost interest pretty quickly, and then they started to not want to do work. So I started to ask them, what are the things that you were interested in doing? And one day, like one of the the 5 guys or so that weren't interested in working on anchors, so he comes up to me and says, hey Do, you should really look at like this DeFi yield farms that are going on Ethereum. And he said he had a good idea for launching something that is actually pretty adjacent to what Terra had already been doing for a year, but tapping into the larger community of Ethereum.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that idea was Basis Cash. So this group, banded together and then created like a pretty cyberpunk, look and feel type of website based on the defunct product Basis. So Basis was a stablecoin that raised $133 million, predicated on building a 3-token system to create an algorithmic stablecoin. So as a brief refresher, the way that it worked was that there was a stablecoin called Basis Cash. There was a bond token to absorb contractions called Basis Bonds. And then the last is something that would benefit from expansions called Basis Shares. So my biggest objection to the Basis system is distinct from Terra is that the model doesn't really make sense because, hold on.
Model doesn't make sense, so it's distinct from what Terra was.
Well, I mean, so back at that time, I felt like it uniquely didn't make sense because you had an asset that was supposed to absorb contractions, but upside is limited, right? So when contractions are happening, there's very limited reasons to buy it because, like such is the nature of these things. Yeah. Whereas you have an asset that if you got into like an early pre-sale or something like that, there's almost no downside, right? Because if it's something that just benefits from expansions and it doesn't really have any, responsibility to absorb contractions like that, then in that case, like the amount of stake that people are willing to put up during contractions is limited.
Yeah.
It also divides the main stakeholders in the ecosystem from people that actually take on the risk.
So you see this project and you say this doesn't really make sense per se, but let's see where it goes. And you join on as Rick Sanchez.
Right.
Because there's a team that was building it and they liked Rick and Morty.
Yeah, so the team that started to build Basis Cash, because
I just want to say, as a Rick and Morty geek, Rick is the smartest man in the universe in Rick and Morty. So to liken Do Kwon to Rick from Rick and Morty, I don't know if this guy is a fangirl or what, but no, that's very disrespectful to Rick of Rick and Morty. And also for Do Kwon to just go along with it, because if you know and you're like, oh yeah, I'm totally Rick, I'm totally the smartest, like liken me to this character. I just wanted to be a nerd and throw that in there.
Being Twitter Anon was all the rage back then. And then they assigned themselves characters from the Rick and Morty universe. So I don't remember the exact mappings, but like their leader was this guy named DeFi Morty. But the issue was they couldn't really speak English all that well because they were based out of Korea and things like that. And then they asked me to see if I can, talk to some reporters or other community members initially, assuming the identity of Rick Sanchez. Right.
Well, wouldn't it help more if you were speaking as Do Kwon?
Right, but then people would ask me like who the other people were.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to be dogged.
Sorry, dude. The guy interviewing looks like such a sleazy used car salesman. I can't get over it. I can't get over
I
it.
bet he thought he ate with this interview. He thought like, I've got one. I have got it. Like, I would never want him to interview or have an honest conversation with the founder ever again, because I would never trust him to get an honest, like,
No,
like,
he looks super shisty.
no point. There's just no. I would have rather not seen this because I feel like it just makes it worse. Like, it's like, okay, like, we basically think you did it, but we have no physical, like, vocal proof or suggestion coming out of your mouth. Now it's like, all right, buddy, let's lock it up, because I don't know, it's giving guilty. That's what it's
And they
giving.
keep getting closer. They keep getting closer together.
It's
They're
giving
going
poor
to
media training because no lawyer wants to represent you. That's what it's also giving as well. And this is what
that
I thought.
too.
I'm going to represent myself in court. And it looks
Very
like
much,
this.
very
Very much
much
so.
Judge Judy vibes.
Doxed.
Really?
Yeah. Well, they didn't want to be doxed in a project that, they had some choice language for regulators that wanted to shut down Basis Cash when they were first doing the project. So if I was doing this in my own persona, I think that would have worked. And I actually, like, using my main account, I was pretty active in the Basis Cash chat as well. But yeah, so I helped them with, like, the initial community building, talking on Telegram a little bit, talking in the voice of what Rick Sanchez would have sounded like. And then it was a fair launch, right? So they structured it as like something where, like, the vast majority of tokens would be given out in an initial farming event. And then there would be subsequent farming events, I think, for, like, either holding the stablecoin or some basis share tokens.
Yeah.
But
But eventually, I mean, it gets built up, it works for a little bit, and then eventually depegs and fails.
right.
And so when you're kind of like attached to the project and you talk about it like you're not attached to the project later on,
Right.
kind of trying to sell UST, does that, I mean, what's kind of the thinking there in terms of, maybe not being like, yeah, I was attached to that project, I didn't invent it, but I was there, and some things went wrong. We use the learnings from that, and now we're building UST, which is better and won't fail the same way.
Well, so I think for Basis Cash, like, I think it was an interesting experiment. I think they were pretty upfront in the Discord and Telegrams about, like, yeah, this thing can depeg. And I think a lot of the early algorithmic stablecoin efforts there, and then like EST, DST, they were pretty upfront about those risks. Most people that were buying these algorithmic stablecoins were DeFi degens that are already made a lot of money in the Ethereum ecosystem. So they understood those risks. They participated because they thought it was interesting. A comparable project like EST, it captured the imagination of, I think, most of the elites in Ethereum DeFi, most of the well-known founders in the ecosystem, actually. And then, so I think, like, bringing the basis mechanism to light and testing it, especially in some sort of, like, almost a sandbox type of environment before DeFi became very large, was good. I think the basis share market cap far exceeded Luna's, like, right after they launched. So they said, all right, we're just going to run this. And they quit the company, and then they started to run it solo. But I think the choices that they made to sort of run Basis Cash and do various different things on top was, I mean, I think for a first effort, they did a lot of things right. But I think some things were, can be left to, there's room for room to be desired. So, for example, like, creating more aggressive farming events, like when the stablecoin demands start to dry up.
Yeah.
After positing it as a fair launch, giving devs explicit token grants from the token pool, and then a short while after that, just selling all the tokens and not doing any work. So those are the things that I am critical of because I never made those choices.
Yeah.
But
at the same time, though, you mentioned like who gets hurt when that depegs. It's mostly DeFi degens,
right,
as you said, who are kind of in Basis Cash.
Right.
When you think about who might have been making these decisions and the risk profiles of degens in crypto versus someone who comes along and sees a stable coin earn 20%, maybe sees it through a Gemini, earn 20%, those kinds of things attracts a very different crowd.
Yeah.
So when you think about like retail people who are new to crypto, maybe don't even know the risks, if there's a distinction there.
It attracts unsophisticated investors. That's the very different crowd. It attracts poor people. That's the very different crowd. Very different crowd is a euphemism.
And Beauty, you don't understand how frustrating it is trying, and we're like literally the people are trying to explain like the technology behind it and how to avoid shit coins. And then this person waves his 20% yield to not poor people, but like just anyone who has extra disposable income or even like money that they're willing to like try to invest. And that's why I think this situation has upset me and like the Celsius and the Voyager. It's because you guys pivoted to people like who are less informed, and you took advantage of their like of you talk about it and you make it all techy and complicated, and like you make it seem so difficult. So you say, well, use our platforms, they're so much easier to use, like you don't have to go through the fuss of understanding. And I need to reiterate how that's how they're going to get you every time in crypto. They're going to put out these projects and you're going to think it's cool, but they're not going to explain things to you, and you're going to be like, oh, but what's happening? And when something goes wrong, you're going to get upset. But it's like, when it sounds too good to be true, in crypto, it specifically is. For crypto projects, you shouldn't be hearing advertisements, founders. You should be seeing financial
No, there
announcements
should
with
not
major.
be. Right, there should not be like major marketing campaigns where marketing is
No,
more than the
you just
actual
get,
like dev and
yeah.
startup cost.
Like you just get third party releasement from press about partnerships and allocation and something major coming out so that people can rush and sign up or get buy now, or that's it. The founder, you don't see the founder of Starbucks like sitting on like Instagram live talking about his projects. Why? Because they're doing things. Like they're not going to talk
Right.
about it. They're literally going to do it. They're going to issue some form of adapt. They're going to invite people and you're going to start using it.
And when it's
People like
time to
that
launch
don't
and
have to
release
hype it
it
up.
is when you find out about it. Right.
Exactly. The best thing to do is to be in the know and following the right platform so that when you start hearing hints of this, you're already on it. So you won't have to hear it from people like this because they're playing on people's lack of intelligence, and I'm very, very much so tired of it. And these comments being made are blatantly disrespectful.
Yeah.
It's predatory.
No, I did it again. Do you remember where we
I think you're
were?
at 24. No, you're further.
Just gonna go ahead and start from here.
Sure.
I mean, I think for a first effort, they did a lot of things right, but I think some things were, can be left to. There's room for desire, room to be desired. So, for example, like creating more aggressive farming events, like when the stablecoin demands start to dry up.
Yeah.
After positing it as a fair launch, um, giving devs explicit token grants from the token pool, and then a short while after that, just selling all the tokens and not doing any work. So those are the things that I am critical of because I never made those choices.
Yeah.
But
at the same time, though, you mentioned like who gets hurt when that depegs. It's mostly DeFi degens,
right.
as you said, who are kind of in basis cash.
Right.
When you think about who might have been making these decisions and the risk profiles of degens in crypto versus someone who comes along and sees a stable coin earn 20%, maybe sees it through a Gemini, earn 20%, those kinds of things attracts a very different crowd.
Yeah.
So when you think about like retail people who are new to crypto, maybe don't even know the risks. If there's a distinction there in terms of who gets hurt when Terra fails, it's no longer someone who's a degen trying to,
Oh, absolutely.
but it's someone who's trying to invest in a savings protocol.
Right.
And it sounds like a savings account.
Right.
Have you thought about that as?
Yeah. So an algorithmic stablecoin, actually, a stablecoin is a very interesting beast, right? Because if you invest into a layer one token, for instance, the risk doesn't really dissipate over time. So, for example, I guess it gets de-risked over scale like any other thing.
Lindy effect.
Right. But psychologically, people understand that you could invest into like an Apple, for instance, and it could lose value overnight. Like if the same thing happened with, like, let's say Nokia, or if you look at like the printer companies, they're dying a slow bleeding death over multiple years, right? But I think for a stablecoin, it's supposed to be a currency, right? So as it starts to build up scale, I think the types of people that get exposed to using a currency becomes less and less sophisticated.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, like when you launch an algo stablecoin for the first time, then I don't think anybody blames like the Iron Finance team, for instance, for getting into that game, because it crashed in 2 weeks. And if you are investing into something that new, that novel, then like the fact that you need to take on the risk is implicit, right? Same for ESD, DSD. So I think when those projects like Depegged and met their doom, I don't think people blame the team very much because they knew what they were getting into.
Yeah.
I think sort of the pain, like the additional pain of UST was that it was supposed to be a currency, right? So, and as currencies get larger and larger, like the number of impacted people, the pain, and the lack of understanding of how currencies work, like also increases as well. So, for example, when there were FX crises that depegged Asian currencies massively against the US dollar, that pain was absorbed by everyone. But I don't think most people understood why that was happening.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people just said that's bad economy. So, for example, throughout like the IMF crisis of '98, or let's say I remember in 2008,
Why the fuck?
2009, the Carabel.
Why is he comparing financial crises in countries from a paired stablecoin altruistic relationship that was depegged by natural, like, ongoing events while using Anchor, the protocol? They're not even comparable.
Also, it's like it's the US dollar against the currency of another sovereign country and
Like,
countries,
what?
right?
Judge,
It's not
relevancy.
the same.
Relevancy, Judge. Like, what the, like, why? Like,
see, I don't know if I'll ever be able to be a professional interviewer, man, because
Peely, we can.
I just be like,
the good guys. We just would not be the good guys.
Wait, hold on. Can you explain this to me really quick? Because I don't really understand.
No,
it's not making that much sense.
I have a theme. So we'll be really nice for the first 30 minutes, and we'll time it. 30 minutes exactly. Like, how did you feel about that? And then, like, that's great. And then we would say everything we want to say.
Like, actually, I've been taking a list. I've been taking notes.
Yeah, so this is where we think you lied. So on December 3rd, 2022, at exactly 4 p.m., you stated, we don't believe that happened. Why would you lie? Why are you lying?
And the reason why we don't believe that happened is because of this statement that you made 2 years ago.
On that following Thursday at 7:28 p.m. Okay, on the Terra blockchain, we saw this wallet do that. Why was that done? You don't know, of course.
That's very interesting.
Interesting.
Super interesting. Yeah, it's one thing like if they can't answer the questions, but make them not answer the question. Like,
but we would just get blocked from interviews. They're just like, no, not you two.
Like, you guys are a bit aggressive and abrasive We need
Lock the
more friendly
elevator door so it can not
interviewers.
come up. Like, no, absolutely fucking no, not them again.
That would be hilarious. I aspire to that.
Exchange rate against the dollar almost went up to 2,000.
Mhm.
So which would make it doubly expensive to buy exports, right? But a lot of people didn't really understand that that was due to like the Korean won losing value. They just thought it was bad economy without understanding what that really means.
Yeah.
So I think that case is applicable to UST as well. The pain was absolutely larger because the way that a lot of users understood UST was that this is just like Tether, this is just like USDC.
Mhm. So who takes on that blame then for not really explaining to retail, or is there no blame? Like, should you be blamed? Should Gemini, Binance, like, is there a need for retail, or is it just like, look, you knew the risks, or you should have known the risks?
I think I should have known the risks of UST much better. You know, like looking back in the position that I was in, I didn't think that the risks that were being posited to UST were material. Every day as UST grew, I just saw it gaining in Lindy, gaining in popularity, gaining more integrations. And it just sort of became this thing.
If it's immaterial, then it's not really a risk now, is it?
Yeah, he does not have a
That
publicist.
sort of
I would not do this interview because he probably thinks that this was like a good interview that would hold up in court.
And again, it's a bunch of nothing. Like we're just reviewing him vomit out words.
I know, but it does, like, it's admissible guilt. It's admissible guilt and awareness and negligence. Like, okay, you weren't there, but it's like saying someone robbed the bank. I didn't hold a gun or like touch the cash, but like I was physically in the property in the back room as they were robbing it.
Right. And you're supposed to expect me to believe that you had nothing to do with it? That you weren't involved in some way, somehow? Okay.
He's literally alluded to like 15 different scenarios where he has knowledge, awareness, where he was in the room while it was happening, but he didn't physically do it, doesn't know the market maker, doesn't know what happens after you give millions of Bitcoin to the market maker. You have other people's crypto that you exchange, yet they have yours.
inspired so much.
So there's so many weird half-answered questions that you are admitting knowledge and awareness, and that is called being an accessory to something. Not saying it's a crime because it's not a legal debate show. However, it's saying that you did participate in some manner and that you could have done things differently to avoid this. However, you did not. So,
Yeah.
Much people in crypto generally, the idea of a decentralized stablecoin.
Yeah.
And I saw UST as that thing that was almost inevitable and was poised to become the money for all of crypto. So, in hindsight, I think we should have been more skeptical of the team instead of, thinking that everything that we do is simply going to work. I think it's a massive failure in terms of proper risk assessment.
This is the thing that I struggle with.
It's a massive failure in terms of proper risk assessment. But earlier when you were asked, well, there was none performed because earlier when you were asked if you ever thought you could fail, you said it never even crossed your mind.
Why would there be risk assessment for something that had no intention of failing? Of course. Why? It is developmental failure because there was no structure around depegging. There was no backup plan. There was assets brought to a space that really couldn't be used to fix the problem that you bought them for. So that's also an issue.
No, there was literally just he did have his plan to shut everything down very quickly, and that's it.
Yeah, but I'm saying
he had his exit plan.
That's fine, but his reasoning for using the BTC, that was a lie. Like, there's no way he could have thought like it could have been implemented. You'd have to wrap $4 million. It doesn't even work like that. It's like
it doesn't make any sense at all.
Put a square into a circle. Like, no, you're like And again, it's like, why would you guys develop something without a backup plan? I feel like every protocol should have a, like, if everything is on fire, what do we do? You know, like,
Right.
this is why Ethereum took like a year or a few years to do this whole merge situation, is because they're, hopefully, dear Lord Jesus, they have multiple backup plans. But like, when you create these things and you have ongoing tech and money is coming in and out of it, you need to think of every horrible scenario that could possibly happen. This is why we have bug bounties. That's why we have auditing teams. They're
This
not
is why we have
mandated, but
ethical hacking. Right.
they're not
Like,
mandated, but they're gonna be after situations like this. We're gonna like run a regulation that says you have to have an audit team. You have to have a paid 24-hour audit team that sends audits to us, so we can see that you guys, at least, we're trying to protect assets on your
like an
platform.
independent third party, yes, and protect from exploits. There are people whose job it literally is to do that. So why aren't you paying people to do that?
Yes, another thing though, it seems much easier to
But
have
well,
such a
so
tragedy when
this goes back to what you said earlier about how there have been reports of people like saying that they intimidate him, which I just don't understand that, because looking at this guy, like, intimidating where, to who? Not me. I just, I don't
oh, I
know.
mean, when he was a little slimmer, he was. I mean, Peely, you don't know
Skinny
how
or
people
fat
are.
doesn't
But
mean anything. He, like,
no, like,
nah,
no, I'm
bro.
not saying, no, not like that. Like when he was making those speeches, and I guess maybe I'm saying maybe he's getting a little weight, so he looks a little bit more like safer and cautionary. But like I've heard like multiple reports that saying he's passive aggressive or like really rude or like
Right.
not,
No, yeah, same thing.
like
And that he's not receptive, and he has also
to
shown this
criticism.
on Twitter as well, that yeah, he's not receptive at all to criticism. So I get how
It
there
looks.
there would have been no opportunity for a risk assessment to be done, because he can't admit or accept when there are risks.
He's just like, "Urgh." Okay. Peely?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I mean, you just talked
sorry.
about
It was
the
like,
Asian financial crisis, which, if there was one area where maybe I was unsure if you knew everything about the risks, because we already talked about every algorithmic stablecoin failing before, there was the financial risk around what someone like a George Soros could do to take down any financial peg. To your point, not just in crypto, but in traditional finance as well. You're dealing with financial currencies. And that was one of the things that was raised, and you retweeted and talked about as this isn't possible. And so when you say there was 0% chance, or at least a very small chance of failure, what about Terra, in your mind, made it untouchable around any of those risks of failure?
So, I'm, straight up, it's not rational, right? So when you think about like the risks that are, possible with any currency, let alone Terra, any currency can fail, right? Like I think right now, if the situation gets any worse, we might even see a collapse of the eurozone and the Japanese yen, right? So even currencies at that scale, the third largest economy in the world, the largest economic collective in the world, like their currencies can fail, rationally speaking. I guess the the only thing that sort of tipped the balance of my thinking into thinking that UST would not fail was because, number one, I thought we were living in the golden age of Web3, and I think we still are, where you're seeing like an explosion of growth of decentralized technologies, and number two, the way that we would program things on top of these digital currencies would be a lot better managed from a risk perspective and a lot more transparent. Thereby, I felt like a lot of the risks that are manifest in central banking planning policies would not be applicable to UST. Both of those things were wrong.
I do think, that was one thing that stood out yesterday when we were talking. You actually kind of
why is the man
seemed
smiling so much?
all right with it.
And I don't know if I
Oh my
appreciate the
God.
transparency. I don't know if I appreciate the transparency of acknowledging in the interview that they hung out the day before as like
It's
bros,
inappropriate. It's inappropriate as
or
fuck.
yeah,
Like,
or if
I've
it
never
upsets me.
seen.
Right,
Is that even is there such thing as journalism integrity? Like, I know every job has some type of thing that they can't do to maintain like morality or awareness. Like, doctors can't treat people if they are sick themselves. Therapists, they can't represent people that they are in close proximity with, right? Like, you can't be your sister's therapist,
right,
right? That's weird.
right,
So, like, journalists shouldn't be chilling and vibing with. I mean, I guess if it's like a artist, it's different because you're like in their environment and getting to know them. But if you're in the realm of someone who lost 40 billion, I think it would be best not to hang out with them and get snacks the day before. I don't know. This is me. Maybe I'm new to this whole journalism
I don't
thing,
think
but
I don't think
doesn't
that's an
seem like the best
unreasonable
idea.
expectation.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool,
I don't
great. Same
think that
page, same
seems
page.
I don't think that seems like an unreasonable expectation.
Wonderful, because
In terms of, you're not trying to prove a conspiracy here, but someone attacking the community, like all they have to gain is a short-term monetary upside. If I don't know, depends on what they did to attack this and how much money they made. But if someone did do that, think about all the pain it caused.
And I just want to take this point to remember and to remind everyone watching that there were anonymous Twitter people that were making bets with Do Kwon about the network failing.
but my issue too is like you're just sliding in the whole Soros thing. Like, you're name dropping George Soros,
Wait,
like
did he
in and
really
over the
name drop
interview.
George
Did
Soros?
you hear? Yeah, because okay, remember the original theory was that two large whales basically pulled out liquidity, shorted it, and then profited, right? That was like the major floating argument that absolved them of blame, because it was like, oh, a whale did it. We're doing our best. If someone removes liquidity, that has no responsibility of us. And then the interviewer himself brings up this theory, not Do Kwon, which alludes some type of relationship in which they have pre-organized this interview and have pre-planned it and are navigating it together. That's why he's sitting there smiling like they just want to, you know what I mean? Like, he has this really friendly demeanor that someone would have if they've planned an interview and planned the narrative that would be played out within an interview. And I don't think it's fair for
Right.
him to drop an allegation that would make him look in a positive light, because all of these things put him in a positive light or shift the shoe to the other foot.
No, literally
Yeah.
everything that he says does that. That's what has this that is what this entire interview has attempted to do since the Tiger comment.
In every trade, there's collateral damage, right? So, for example, if you're buying a token, then somebody that put out a short gets hurt. And this could be retail, right? Like, a lot of people take out leverage shorts because they learned margin trading for the first time looking at, let's say FTX Academy or something, and then they figure out how to do it. And then when you sell a token, that loss is socialized amongst the rest of the holders. So, like, if you start to get like emotional and assign blame for how trades are executed in what is supposed to be a credible, neutral, and transparent market, then I'm not very bullish on the future of crypto if that's the case. So the reason why I don't blame short sellers and I don't try to find out like who sold or what the motivations might be or things like that is because there's no blame to assign, right? If you see a market opportunity, a trader's job is to be rational about it, erase emotion, and take it. So if like the peg broke, then you can't blame the trader that took a market opportunity.
Do Kwon, are you
They
the
shorted enough
trader
to just.
that took are you the trader that took the market opportunity?
I mean, it's like, okay, but it's like, okay, so You say that, but if someone did a flash loan that had enough to pull off so much liquidity to your platform was unusable, plausibly could have happened as well. You wouldn't be saying that. So saying
Well,
that again
and that's an exploit, right? Like that's an attack at
at a
that
certain
point.
degree,
That's not just regular trading. That's not just putting
I
in a
mean,
sell
because
order.
hypothetically, the flash loan theory is if you can buy and sell within the same transaction, the difference in liquidity was not noticed by the platform itself. Hypothetically, you just profit it. But if it's something where you basically had an extended flash loan that you can do on the Arbitrum, not the I'm so sorry, the Aave app, um, they have an extended flash loan where you can like do it on multiple exchanges and aggregators all at once. And if you're like that, you know what I mean? If you figured it out, I mean, but also it's like it takes a lot of skill to do that. Like I know we all talk about it, like it's like really easy, but like literally you have to track the price points of various cryptos all at the same time and then find the moment of the difference and then like plan it
Mm-hmm.
out. It's kind of like psychotic. So that's why I say like those that can do it, it's not an exploit. It's more like a calculated trade, but like at such high amounts, it can become an exploit and should be looked at as an exploit. Like you shouldn't be doing that with
Right.
$1 million. Like don't do that. That obviously isn't, even if you can, like there's gonna be some issue.
Because I think maybe it's because at the size that the network was currently at, it just couldn't support something of that size.
Yeah, versus its ongoing trades at the same time, and the buys and sells and everything that's happening.
Maybe from an objective standpoint, but from where you sit as a subjective standpoint, if someone came into my house and did something to my family, that's the way I would see it.
Right, but let me tell you this: if there was a tiger that had been starved for a week, and then your family and this tiger happens to meet, and the tiger happens to kill a member of your family and eats it, can you really blame the animal?
Kind of.
So
Kind of.
if I went down that route and then spent,
We're not
I'm
talking about
I'm
animals though. We're
so
talking about
drained
human
from this fucking
beings.
interview. This is
I
the
am
worst
so sick.
interview.
I am so sick of these like sigma beta males that
Is that what it's
always
called?
compare. No, well, they call themselves sigma males. I'm calling themselves beta males.
What are they? They're a new
But
species. I don't like
they're
most of
they're
them.
just they're just little boys anyway. But like, why are you comparing human beings to animals? We're not animals. We're talking about human beings. Like, why are you bringing up tigers? Like, you're not a tiger. Your
I'm
homies that
not
you did
casting
this with are not
someone.
tigers. Like,
I just don't understand the reference. You're trying to say if a tiger walked in and killed your kid, what the fuck? Like, what type of reference?
do you blame the hungry tiger for eating your family? Like, well, it's an animal,
And if you
so
wanted to,
like probably not. But also, we're not talking about tigers here, are we? We're talking about
who
human
is,
beings.
but who is
Who
the
are the
tiger?
hungry tigers?
And
Who
it's
are the hungry
family. I
tigers?
don't understand. Are we the family? Does one of us deserve to die? Like, is this? That's why I just don't understand the reference. I want him to explain it because he said it twice. Like, why would you? It's if you say something like off-putting or crazy once, it's like okay, we didn't hear him. You said it twice, and now you're like breaking it down for us. Like, what is happening?
Like, please, I need more context, sir.
I don't.
you know, months, years collecting evidence and, meeting investigators and talking to press and things like that, that, it's just going to be so much harder for me to do anything else. And logically, I do genuinely agree in that, like, you cannot be emotional about markets, right? You can't blame people for shorting. You can't call people idiots for longing. right? People just make those trades. Markets are dispassionate, and they move the way that they will. So I think your point about if I let myself, think in that direction, I just, would be like a shell of a man for several years, right? But I do intend to do really interesting work, and
But I mean, to your tiger metaphor, right? When you're talking about that, it's like, all right, do you blame a tiger for coming in and eating one of my family members? It's like in this, it's someone saw the 3-pool, the 4-pool migration, waited for the perfect time. It was calculated. It wasn't just an emotional, I need to eat. It was, this is the time to strike and take this thing down. And if that's the case, it's a little bit more calculated.
yeah, so if you're asking me whether there was a mole at TFL, that's probably yes. Whether somebody tried to take advantage of that particular
So
opportunity, I would say that
let's
the
stop.
answer is
Hold on.
yes. But if those opportunities,
So the mole.
Bro, everybody
one of
but
the kids-
him. Everybody but
Oh,
him.
wait, I figured out the
And
name.
remember, they only lost 2 devs. Everybody
He was
but
the
him.
tiger that killed the kid. That is the fictional allegory for a mole in his company. So is he saying that it's okay if he destroys his own company because there's a mole within it?
Because he's a hungry tiger.
Tiger. Do Kwon is the tiger.
But not to be that person, but it's kind of racist. Kind of racist. No, I know you didn't. I know you didn't mean it like that.
Allegory.
No. I understand. I understand. But like, only because he's Asian is it acceptable. But if it were not, and he was like, oh yeah, I'm a tiger, like, okay, a little racist. If that were the case, we can totally edit this out.
Okay. There's people call
opportunities
them.
existed,
Who would
then
call
the
them
blame is on
tigers, though? That's
against
what
Luna.
makes
But
Are you fucking
This
kidding
is the thing
me?
that I struggle with because, like,
it went back
there's
again?
someone who did this.
the only people that knew that were TFL employees. The event happened precisely at the moment when our entire leadership were on flights trying to get to Singapore for like a quarterly summit. So thereby like incapacitated from any responses either on social media or anything of that kind. So there was probably some information flows that we're not aware of to this day.
So this was an extremely calculated move.
I'm just saying that there's coincidences, and I'm trying really hard not to go down this rabbit hole because I don't want to let myself.
But why?
Why?
How are you going down a rabbit hole that you set up? Because this whole thing is full of fucking rabbit holes and tigers.
Is it a rabbit hole or is it a molehill?
And random illusions. You're giving all these like side stories. I feel like I've been in GTA watching this interview, going on side missions with your stories about all these different companies that we didn't even know existed until this interview. This is insanity.
Can't.
Give us our time back.
Don't you want to let yourself go down that hole? Because, again, if it were me, there's someone who did this. And there's an aspect of, I don't want to say revenge, but there's an aspect of trying to figure it out that would be really hard to turn off.
But what good would that do, right? Like, let's say that we found like a dark network of like hedge funds that had tried to take down
restitution.
I'm sorry.
Restitution.
Wait,
What do you mean? What good would that do?
And then this motherfucker says, I don't want to go down that fast. But what if there was a secret dark web where all the hedge funds were like ready to shut us down? Wait, so do you not?
Like, what could that do? Would we sue them? This is still happening.
My
So we decided
fucking
to deploy
God.
LFG reserves.
I'm sorry, I'm
deployed,
giving you
though,
so much to edit.
Trying to build reserves to sue them for billions of dollars and try to use that money to make USD holders whole.
Why'd you do it?
The event happened precisely at the moment when our entire leadership were on flights trying to get to Singapore for like a quarterly summit. So thereby like incapacitated from any responses either on social media or anything of that kind. So,
That's suspicious.
there was probably some information flows that we're not aware of to this day.
So this was an extremely calculated move.
From him.
I'm just saying that there's coincidences, and I'm trying really hard not to go down this rabbit hole because I don't want to let myself.
But why don't you want to let yourself go down that hole? Because, again, if it were me, there's someone who did this. And there's an aspect of, I don't want to say revenge, but there's an aspect of trying to figure it out that would be really hard to turn off.
But what good would that do, right? Like, let's say that we found like a dark network of like hedge funds that have tried to take down Terra and Luna. Like, what could that do? Would we sue them for billions of dollars and try to use that money to make USD holders whole?
Yes. 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 That sounds like a great idea. Why didn't I think of that?
Maybe not. But I think about kind of the way that you responded to some of those tweets about how this could be done. You said, billionaires in my network, test me and try. Find out.
That was a little different though, because what Freddie's analysis was saying was you could acquire a lot of UST from open markets because like the swap spread impacts more on the way down rather than on the way up.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually symmetry in both directions. So the cost of staging an attack is identical to as when you are acquiring your UST stake versus divesting. Now, like if that analysis had concluded like the timing of LFG, like trying to build reserves to, let's say to build like Bitcoin reserves and things like that, that would have been a totally different dynamic. But those things hadn't existed at that point.
I almost wonder if it sounds like there's a route to go down if you open that box and you find out the answer to who was behind it. And I guess it's fair to ask and make sure that it wasn't you.
Are you asking whether I shorted?
Yeah.
I've never shorted a cryptocurrency in my life, let alone Luna and UST.
Bro. What you mean?
They could literally have a whole court case with that. Like, this is just play this as a hearing. You could. Like, just play it. Just have it in the background. Like,
he's
why
not
are you
American,
lying?
so I don't know if like he like even knows what the Fifth Amendment is, right? Or like just the right to, you have a right to not incriminate yourself. You have a right to
Clearly,
not
look at all that,
incriminate yourself.
God.
And he just doesn't. I can't imagine. I can't. What do you mean you've never shorted anything?
You're a liar. You're a liar.
And he took entirely, like, his body language responded yes when the guy asked if he was the one that did it. His body language responded yes. He verbally said no, and then he like said he answered a question that wasn't asked.
I don't know.
And there's no upside for you to see.
There's zero upside for me to do any such thing.
So when it comes to figuring out who was behind this, then I feel like as a founder, if you're saying that you don't want to go down that path because it would mean ultimately that it would prove you failed to protect against that, is that the main reason why?
No, it's not so much that. It's just that like even if you found somebody that has shorted, like Luna and UST, or like accumulated UST with the purpose of depegging it, I don't think that's legal. How I deal with stress is that I only care about things that matter and I can do something about. So this seems to be squarely in the realm of something that would give me personal emotional closure, but that would be a selfish thing to do because even if I knew, there's nothing that can be done.
He's like the Riddler, okay? Like he's fucking with us and like creating all these scenarios. Now,
what do you mean it would be selfish to do the right thing?
He's literally said
like even if you're doing the right thing for the wrong reasons, you're still doing the right thing. And if people that were harmed benefit from you doing the right thing, even if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, like, I just ew. And then I froze on a really good frame. This needs to be memed. Like, we really need a meme out of this facial expression.
Oh, you want to take a
Right?
picture?
So I choose to spend my time, not blaming other people, but instead focusing on what we can do next with the resources that are available with like the insights and the talent that we've accumulated over the years. And that's what gives me closure.
At the same time, though, I guess, if it sounds like you're putting all these things together, the fact that it happened when everyone was on a plane, and the fact that when you landed, like, this stuff did seem calculated to the only thing that anyone knew about the timing of the 3-pool to 4-pool migration was internal to Terraform Labs, which means they're an employee of yours. Somebody, by that, connecting the dots, somebody stabbed you in the back.
Yeah.
If someone stabbed you in the back, how would you not want to know?
Zach, from that question, I can see that you've never been stabbed in the back before.
I have been stabbed.
Zach, from that question, I can see that you've never been stabbed in the back before.
That's not an appropriate response. That's kind of an aggressive response. Yeah.
But he's mocking him. It's just
like,
funny to him.
You've never been stabbed in the back before. Like, okay, and why are you proud of that? That's weird. That's so weird. Honestly.
In the back before.
Right.
And I made every single effort to look that person in the eye and say, you should know you fucked up.
Right. I think after a while, you kind of learn to let it go, especially when Terra was at the peak. It was, it just become very political. And like once you start to become personally, emotionally invested in like all sorts of things that are happening from business side, then it's just very difficult to lead life, right? So yes, there was an internal mole. He was sharing screenshots of various different things. Probably precedes
I thought you said you didn't know who it was, and that you didn't want to go down a rabbit hole, but it was a he. Okay, cool.
You're listening. You're listening. I didn't hear that. He said a he. So you do know that he be the person you gave the money to. He's a liar.
Well, yes, we know this, but
I know.
Yeah,
like he's
like if you're gonna be a liar, be good at it. I can respect good liars.
Yeah.
Yes, but I can respect a good liar, but a bad liar, like I feel like you're actively trying to insult my intelligence, and I just can't.
been leaking things to the press and things like that, but
that was something you knew about.
I mean, leaking to the details to the press is one thing because these are like about like a round we're putting together, so we probably would have put out a press release anyway. So yeah, there were multiple people that had reporters that were friends and were telling the reporters. Sometimes I knew who they were.
Yeah.
But it didn't seem like something that you would, fire somebody for.
That's also pretty important though, because you talk about if that were the case, you've already moved past the 3-pool to 4-pool migration. They've initiated the attack. You're now in defense mode. You're in a war room with people and you don't know who you can trust. You're putting together a round to save Terra at that point. And the details of the deal leak to press, and it tanks the deal that would have saved.
Oh, so I don't think that came from like TFL. Like from some of the details that I've seen, I think it's from probably like the funds that were pitched. But like in terms of like the round being put together, that was a very tight group. So I don't think that was impacted. But in any case, like going back to like the backstabbing discussion, it's just business.
You don't take it personally.
I don't take it personally.
That is the one piece about this that I'm terrible at then, I guess. And maybe some people in the community also feel this way. Because there were equal opportunities for anyone who is long Terra or believed in the project to short it, right? If it's mid-depeg mode and everyone's seen this before and says, look, there's a chance for this to go to 0, and probably likely, especially after you tweet steady lads and there's a plan coming, the deal falls through, it's sitting there and there's a ripe opportunity when UST is at 60 cents to short the whole damn thing. The ability to short everything, even in that moment, I couldn't bring myself to do it. And you said it yourself as if it is a badge of honor. I never shorted Luna myself. Never shorted a cryptocurrency in my life.
Well, I mean, just because it's not, I don't consider that necessarily to be unethical. It's not something that I want to do. So I think about crypto communities as communities, right? So I think like the 3-3 move put up by Olympus doesn't really make that much sense from an economic perspective. But I think it's indicative of how crypto assets are a little bit more than simple financial assets. They're not like equities. They're not like commodities. But for a lot of these tokens that represent,
Why aren't they like equities and commodities? Because it signals more about who you are, what you believe in?
because you're not supposed to be passive investors, right? Like every crypto community encourages and tries to galvanize its community to some higher moral calling, right? So the moral calling of the Terra community was to deliver the promise of decentralized money to as many places across the world as possible. And I think many people took up that mantle and decided to leave their jobs and create companies and do all sorts of things in service of a higher mission.
Or put their money into it.
Yes, but yes, and of course, a lot of people are passive investors. But I think crypto is unique in the sense that it's converted more of its passive investor base into people,
believers.
into believers, into people that are actually can be called out to action to serve the community in more ways than capital. And I think that's what makes it strong.
But that's the thing that also I feel like would piss off anyone who believed in your mission and felt like they were a part of that mission. And you're saying that you don't have an emotional response to that. Which me, as some guy
I did not say that I don't have an emotional response. I'm just saying that I've tried to make a calm-headed decision to categorize this as business and to move on to other things.
and the alternative if you don't.
Yeah, I mean, from a pure emotional standpoint, look at it from my standpoint. Like, it's the reason why I haven't shorted any cryptocurrency is not because I'm a bad trader, right? Like, of course I know how shorting works. Of course I know sometimes when there are opportunities. Like, everybody tells me things, right? Like I was like a top 10 project founder. Like I have information, but I don't trade those things, not because I don't know how to make money.
Did he just say
Yeah, he just said
that
that he's
markets
gonna
are
wash his rent.
manipulated?
Yeah, and
Did
then he
he?
said, "I'm just gonna
He
move
just said that
on."
markets. He just said that markets are manipulated. Okay,
Go
cool.
back. Wait, how did he say markets were like? Go back. What did he say?
Hold on.
Thing that also I feel like would piss off anyone who believed in your mission and felt like they were a part of that mission. And you're saying that you don't have an emotional response to that. Which me, as some guy
I did not say that I don't have an emotional response. I'm just saying that I've tried to make a calm-headed decision to categorize this as business and to move on to other things.
and the alternative if you don't.
Yeah, I mean, from a pure emotional standpoint, look at it from my standpoint. Like, it's the reason why I haven't shorted any cryptocurrency is not because I'm a bad trader, right? Like, of course I know how shorting works. Of course I know sometimes when there are opportunities. Like, everybody tells me things, right? Like I
That
was
right there. Everybody tells me things that I
So
was a top 10. I was a top 10, community developer.
I mean, yeah. I mean, they're doing OTCs. I mean,
So
but to me, let's get. I have to clarify. This is not the face of crypto. Like, this isn't what we would like to a
no,
puppet to be,
definitely
right?
not. And this
So
is why we focus on him, because it was a humongous project. It was incredibly pervasive, and this had ripple effects throughout the entire space.
But like, I have friends. So one of my friends was like, "Oh, I love like I invest in, like, I put my money in Voyager. Like, I don't trust crypto. Like, because these incidents are happening now, they're like, oh, I don't trust crypto." And it's just like, it's not. It's like saying, because someone took 40K out of my duffel bag, I don't trust cash anymore. It's like it has nothing to do with how you're holding it. It has everything to do with the project you chose to invest
It
in.
was the fact
And
that
then
you kept it in a duffel bag.
the fact you kept it in a duffel bag, baby. And then the fact that you didn't research Voyager, you didn't research Celsius, you didn't research, you just were like, oh, this is making, and that's another thing. People like to get upset, but I'm like, you guys looked at that yield and you didn't give a fuck after that. You're just like, oh, and you dumped.
Mm-hmm.
You saw that yield and you dumped. So like, I'm gonna start there. That is your fault. No one told you to go on those platforms. We can encourage you about the technology and the coins, but you have to do your own due diligence if you're not holding self custody, because things like this
Right.
happen, and beyond self custody there really is very little protection for you. But this is why we told people, if it does not offer self like security, what are you trading instead of like self custody? What are you giving up for your self custody? Probably
Right.
your rights to your assets in an emergency.
Like a top 10 project founder, like I have information, but I don't trade those things, not because I don't know how to make money, but because I know that these things represent more than simple financial assets.
Wait, that's
That if I
different.
shorted a
Wait,
community or I act,
that's different. Okay, so shorting is when, like, okay, so the ETH merge, right? Like, you think it's gonna eat shit, short it, right? That's different, right? That's an observation about market conditions. Knowing shit is going to pop because you talk to different founders, and that is a crime because
That's
someone
why.
else fucked
That's
up at
why I
Coinbase and got
said.
arrested for it. So you're an
That's why
idiot.
I
You're
said.
literally
Are you? That's why I said. Is he saying right now that is he admitting to market manipulation
I feel like
and
I
collusion?
I got more tea this time watching this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, saying that you didn't insider trade when you knew about like if you figured out avenues isn't that doesn't make you a good person. It just makes you like, oh, I didn't feel like insider trading today. Do it on a Tuesday. Like,
Yep.
mm-hmm,
Mm-hmm. That's why I
mm-hmm.
caught that. That's why I caught that.
Okay.
on information that I have that other people don't, that there's other people on the other side of that trade that get hurt.
Mhm.
Having said that, that doesn't mean that I should let my emotions guide, you know, on like objective what other people do, right? So everybody's from different circumstances. They just make different decisions.
That's fair.
But
If someone comes after me, if the tiger eats me, I can't blame the tiger.
then he said, oh, but then sometimes I'm gonna reevaluate this decision and then short the fuck out of it. That's basically what he said, right? We're so tired.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tiger.
Right.
The tiger eats my family. I'm gonna kill the tiger.
Have you heard the analogy of the market being a jungle?
Yeah, but it's people. Like you just said, it's people believing in certain things, and you know, there's the downside beyond just numbers on a screen. It's people, right? I mean, I guess at the same time, you could flip that and say, all right, you're building this thing up, you're sucking people's money in. It's like it's just a jungle. Could be a way to look at it and say, you know, it wasn't my fault. But you also believe that there was some blame that should be put on your shoulders. So it just seems kind of like looking at it as it's a jungle when someone attacks Terra, but also you're saying that some of this is your fault too. So that kind of seems inconsistent.
Interesting philosophical discussion. I think there's aspects to this where participants are humans. I think there's aspects to this where we're beasts. Interesting discussion.
That man should have beat his ass outside of his house. I said what I said. I may not edit it out because
I swear to God. Ah, that's
what
funny.
is that? Let's have a philosophical conversation when you lost 40 billion. Oh, I have something philosophic for you, and it's not a conversation. No, honey. No, honey.
Something about some eyes and some stones.
A little. How far can you fall? Let's measure that. Since you lost, we're gonna talk about that. Those windows look
Ay,
really nice. Let's estimate them.
that was
Mm-hmm.
really funny. I cannot wait to see what comes up next in this whole saga. I'm just very, very excited. I really hope
Oh,
he
you
does
know,
like face justice, and
he's
that
just lucky
if
he's not
people
in America. I
yeah,
mean, but
if
he does
people
have
can be
time.
made whole again, he did affect, and
No.
I believe he was operating on American exchanges, so I'm just not really sure. I don't know.
Well, if the SEC gave a fuck, but they're too busy suing Ripple and MyBerry and other projects that are actually not even securities, and then now he's like whitewashing or like generalizing the term. He's like saying, "Oh, well, now we don't need to specify the difference between You've seen some of his statements where he's saying we don't have to specify the difference between a cryptocurrency and security. All they are is assets that we must regulate." So now he's
Yeah,
basically rinsing the definitive term
right. But
and going, he's like, "Oh, I don't care."
the
Yeah, they need to snap
CFTC is
that shit
saying
pretty much.
that they have jurisdiction. I don't know. That's a
Yeah,
whole mess as well because they need to
so he
figure
needs to
out
walk
like, and
away.
ultimately it's up to Congress via legislation to determine who is the best body to
God.
regulate cryptocurrencies, and they are working on that via legislative avenues. I don't think that it's gonna end up being the SEC.
Personally, from a regulatory space, I would have been like, you guys have failed. You've had it this time, and look at what you've done. And your whole job is to protect American investors. And there are 3 U.S. platforms that were not regulated. They're not crypto companies. They are regular companies offering crypto-based assets. If it's anyone's
Mm-hmm.
fault, it is the SEC
And
because they sat with
custodying
these
them, and
companies
returning yields.
and you
Yeah,
issued them fines and you did nothing else. And now look at the shit that's happening right now. Like, but you're fighting Ripple. Like, that's what I'm trying. Like, I just don't understand, like, the level of concern. It's like, what do you guys really, truly, and utterly want? It's not to protect investors because you haven't done
not a
that
damn
for the
thing.
past 4 years. Because we wouldn't be sitting here going through all of this footage and interviews if there wasn't enough market, issues that
Right.
the SEC. And the crazy thing about it too is that they're aware of these issues. They met with Voyager, they issued notices to Celsius, but they didn't follow up with them and put them into court and have a major lawsuit before it got to this point.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, it's gonna have to keep making, videos and exposing people.
Yeah,
So,
I can't.
yeah.
I kind of can't wait until his next interview, or until there is like something announced, like a hearing or anything like that, like
And
more like
yeah.
legal action, whether it be in his country or in any other country, that where people were affected
But
by his
I
shenanigans.
I think the way he did it is what's making it hard to pin it on him. Think about it from a legal perspective. From a legal perspective, I think what happens is some of these founders reduce themselves to be anything more than a spokesperson. Do you see the verbiage he's using? The removal of self, the identification of working in teams, the separate
Yeah.
companies. And when you
Mm-hmm.
start thinking of that legally on paper, how much has he linked himself to?
Right.
And it's probably very hard to legally bind him to anything.
Right. That makes sense.
Probably what it is. Yeah, unfortunately.
It's
That's
very
why
annoying,
I
but it
don't,
makes sense.
well, because they won't make proper regulations. So this is what we have to deal with.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, that's that for this interview. Thank you guys for sticking with us and watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We do love your engagement and interaction. And please interact and check out the link in the description.
Thank you guys. See you
Bye.
soon. Bye.